Okay. Should we start? Okay, good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here to join us to talk about the Thriving Cities Challenge. I'm Beth Conover. I'm the Executive Director of the Salazar Center for North American Conservation, and I'm joined on your screen by Benita Duran, who is working with us on the challenge, and Katie Bamer, who works with the center. This is the second year that we have offered an incentive challenge related to excellence in conservation impact, by which we mean a wide range of things. But we're very happy to have a large group here with us today. It looked like we had over 200 people registered. Salazar Center, just backing up, the Salazar Center for North American Conservation has existed since 2018, and our mission is to advance the health and resilience of natural systems and human communities. We do that by convening, by sharing resources, and through an annual symposium and incentive prize program. So moving forward, today we're going to go to the agenda. I just want to remind people to stay on mute. We have an hour-long program today with a 30-minute presentation and 30 minutes for Q&A. Identify yourself if possible for the Q&A and enter your questions through the question box. There is a chat function, but we don't think it works for this. So let's use the question box to do that. Very quickly, going through the agenda. Who is the Salazar Center? I explained that. We're based at Colorado State University, and we were initiated through the efforts of former Secretary of Interior Ken Salazar, who wanted to see a program that combined the best practices from around the country for both urban and rural working in wildlands and public and private lands, as he had learned a lot in his experience that he felt wasn't available or being replicated. Why the Thriving Cities Challenge? We're going to go through that in a moment. We will talk about an overview of the challenge, eligibility, timeline, application, requirements, and process, and the scoring, including the rubric that will be used by evaluators to score the challenge. More than anything, it's important to know that we hope this process will be of value above and beyond the prize winner. And it's about building a community of interest and not simply about who wins the challenge. We will share the slide deck and the recording via email before the end of the week. Okay, so the Salazar Center, as I described a little bit earlier, Secretary Salazar and former CSU President, now Chancellor Frank, created the center in 2016. I began as its first executive director in 2018, and we've been operational ever since. We're based at Colorado State University with offices in both Fort Collins and Denver, Colorado. But our interest is in the work that we do across North America. As I mentioned, we were founded by former Secretary of Interior Ken Salazar, seen here in a recent Denver Post article. We are external facing and impact oriented. So as Colorado State is a major research university, we are focused on how to translate some of that research into policy and practice, and how to build a community of interest around the things that we work on. We are a convener of thought leaders, resources, and diverse perspectives. We hope to inform an intersectional approach to conservation challenges. That means working across disciplines, across perspectives, and sometimes across political philosophies. So that's who we are. We do that through offering an annual symposium, an incentive challenge, as well as through a series of webinars, case studies, and a variety of other resources. Next slide. You can sign up for our e-news to learn more and get regular updates from the Salazar Center at salazarcenter.colostate.edu/news or /news. You can also follow us on social media at the following links, or email us at the email provided here at csusalazarcenter@gmail.com. We hope that this incentive challenge will offer an opportunity for folks to get to know the Salazar Center and to share ideas and resources where desired to help enrich the broader community of interest and knowledge around that we're trying to share. In the case of the Thriving Cities Challenge, and let's move to the next slide, we are really focused on the disproportionate impact of climate change on cities, and specifically on communities of color and lower income communities in cities. Cities are facing the effects of climate change and confronting policies that often leave communities of color more vulnerable to climate impacts. We believe there is hope and that nature-based solutions can make communities more resilient and improve the health of cities and their residents. I think, yeah, let's move to the next slide. So why this challenge? We're a small organization. We have a North American scope, but we are, a few staff based in Colorado. And with the profile and help of Secretary Salazar, we are excited about the opportunity to bring people together to share ideas. We hope to find ideas. Sorry, I'm just wanting to make sure that I say this in the way I intend. We hope to find ideas that overlap at the intersection of racial equity, climate resilience, and nature-based solutions in urban areas. Urban areas being defined as, in many different ways, as settlements of people within the built environment. So it's important to us that the proposals bring these three ideas together. Next slide. Thanks. And in a moment, I will hand this over to Benita Duran to talk more about the details of the challenge. This is the first challenge we've offered with a focus on cities. It's actually the second challenge we've offered at all. And so we learn as we go. And I just want to acknowledge that up front. We do not consider ourselves experts. We have the ability to gather great ideas and to help build a community of interest. And we're trying to make the most of that idea through this challenge, through the visibility of Secretary Salazar, and through our ability to convene folks. We have a great team of advisors, and you can find a list of them on the thrivingcitieschallenge.com website. Together, they probably have over 100 years of work experience at the intersection of these issues. And so we've learned a lot from them and drawn from their expertise as we've developed the program. We specifically developed this challenge because we want to be responsive to the time and environment we're in and to build this community of interest. And as I said earlier, we especially have focused on trying to develop a challenge that is not as much about a winner-take-all as about building the field, where there is interest and willingness in sharing ideas and sharing things that have worked and sharing challenges and frustrations and helping everyone who engages in this process learn from and improve the work they're trying to do in their respective locations. So at this point, we're hoping that the proposal process will be beneficial for everyone who applies. And I'm going to hand off to Benita to begin to describe how that's done. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth. When I think about this effort and the initiative and what we're taking on here, I think what I want you all to know is that it really is genuinely a very thoughtful process that's been designed here. And it truly is one that is equity focused. And, as Beth was describing our path to this place, it really is a challenge for all of us. But this is the kind of challenge that I think we all need to be taking on right now. So you would find that if you become an applicant, that it's really an opportunity to engage with the center and what's being offered here. And it's an opportunity to build community. I mean, while we're building a community of interest around this topic and these issues, we're building a stronger community with you to take on some of these challenges that we have before us. But to participate in this, you need to apply. And in this process, as you can see in the graphic, we have designed the process so that applicants all get feedback. They get feedback from the experts in the field that we've aligned to be the evaluators of applications. And you'll get meaningful feedback that will help shape and hopefully strengthen your proposal and your application and the direction that you're heading so that you can move forward with success. Those that are selected to be in the cohort group to get the additional capacity building and coaching will be in an environment that's tailored to their needs and their program plans. Right now, our budget allows for 5 participants in this cohort group, but we hope to expand that to 10 to maybe 15, depending on the funding that we receive to support this cohort group. And then the cohort group will be invited to be participants in the pitch event that will occur in September. And we'll give you more information on the specific dates in that time frame. But my message here related to all this is that there are multiple reasons to consider applying and taking on this challenge. And as Beth said, it isn't all about one winner, because everyone who participates in this effort is genuinely a winner in this kind of approach. Next slide. So a little bit about how we've structured the application teams and what we're envisioning here. A lot of this is oriented around the concept that you have, your idea, your solution that takes shape in partnership with others. So we need you to think strategically about this effort and to think big. And it could be that these are natural partners that you already have in place that you've established relationships with, or it could be new partnerships, new connections, building new community. And you have several opportunities in the application that you'll see more about to speak to the partnerships and to the rationale that's behind the group you're pulling together and the issue or the challenge that you're taking on. And it could be that it's an alignment of not just one nonprofit organization that's led by a person of color or of diverse background, but it could be more than one. It could be 2 nonprofit organizations and a local government or a community development entity that works in your community. There are multiple different combinations that can be aligned here in your project. Next slide. But what is a priority, as you can see, is that at least one organization needs to be a nonprofit organization. And most importantly, for our equity agenda and focus, is that the organization is led by, on staff, or in its board leadership, a Black, Indigenous, or other person of color. That's a really key element to building capacity and taking on some of these challenges ahead. And the proposal needs to occur in a city, a town, a district, a community in the United States, in Canada, in Mexico, Puerto Rico, or the Virgin Islands. Next slide. And so the timeline. So we'll be going through the application itself with the questions and providing other details. And Katie Bamer will be leading us through that. But in my closing here, I just want to again reinforce that it's an invitation for you to bring your ideas to the table, and that by applying, you're inviting an opportunity to share a vision for thriving in a world, in an environment where we need to thrive and we need that hope of success. And more than ever, it's really important to take on these challenges at this time. The deadline for the application is April 15th, about 7 weeks from today. And we're here to help, and we're here as a resource. And so please do reach out to us, and we look forward to connecting more in the future. Thank you.
All right, I will take it from here. Thank you, Benita. Just so everybody knows, my name is Katie Bamer. I'm a part of the team at the Salazar Center, as indicated by my name on the screen. Before we jump into the scoring and the application itself, I just wanted to let everybody know that there are a few different resources that we've added to our website to hopefully help you through this process. There is a number of frequently asked questions that we have compiled and answered on the How to Participate page, which you can find from the main page of the website. And in that section, we define what is a city. It's a pretty loose definition, just because we want as many good applicants as possible. We define what nature-based solutions are. We talk about eligibility. So if you have any questions, we encourage you to look there. But if your question is not addressed there, we will have plenty of time to take questions today. In addition to the FAQ, another page that we encourage you to look at is the Applicant Resources tab, and there are a few different things on that page. We've provided a number of examples of nature-based solutions, examples of cities working on equity in a environmental health and community health context, examples of climate resilience programs and efforts that have taken place across North America. And as we see more examples of that come up in the news and in our own networks, we'll continue to add to that list. But if you're trying to figure out if your project kind of checks all these boxes of resilience, equity, and nature-based solutions, that's a great place to look. Also on that page, you'll find other resources that we think might be helpful, from other funding opportunities to organizations that are doing similar work who you might look to help develop your project. And similarly, we'll continue to add to that list over time. And if you have any questions or concerns that aren't addressed by any of those sections, once again, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at that email. So as you're thinking about submitting your application, obviously it's of interest of how we're scoring these. We will, as Beth and Benita mentioned, have a really robust evaluation panel. At every single proposal will get reviewed by at least 5 evaluators. So you'll have a good group looking at your idea and assessing it. Each proposal will be scored against 5 criteria: community-led and place-based, equity-centered, feasible, innovative, and impactful. Each of these criteria are broken down in a lot more detail on the website under the scoring process tab. And there you can see what a score under each of those criteria looks like on a scale from 1 to 5. At the conclusion of the application period, we will share those scores with you, as well as the comments and feedback that the evaluators submit. So you've heard all of this good information and think you have a project that you want to apply for funding for. So it's a pretty straightforward application. You can access it from the Apply tab on our website. For the most part, it is general text entry fields, entering everything from your name to telling us what challenge you're facing in your city. But there are a few pieces that I do want to point out before we jump into a demo of that application platform. For the first time, we did not do this last year, we are allowing applicants to submit in Spanish if they so desire. So when you go to that apply page, there's an option to click over to a Spanish translation. You can submit your answers in Spanish, and then we'll translate them back before we hand them over to the evaluation panel. Another thing that we're offering for the first time that we didn't do last year is the opportunity to add co-applicants. We want everybody to be part of a team. And if it helps you to have multiple people working on the application together, we've created that option for you. A primary applicant will have to go in and create a profile. And when you're doing that, you're able to add up to 3 co-applicants who will have access to all the question fields and be able to work on that with you. And then the primary applicant is the person who can submit the application. Another thing that I'd like to point out is that we do request that everybody submit a short video as part of their proposal. This is where we want to see some visual interest, you know, put names to faces and really get a feel for your energy and your passion. This does not need to be a professionally produced video. To that end, we've provided both some guidelines on what kind of content you might put in that short video, as well as tips for shooting it in a non-professional way, such as taking a PowerPoint presentation and turning it into a video or shooting it on your iPhone. This is really just your opportunity to add another layer to your story. It does not need to be a fancy production. And all we ask for in that application itself is a YouTube link, and there are instructions on how to upload and get that link for us. And the last part of the application that I would like to point out before we jump into the demo is letters of support. We've made this field optional. If you have a really robust team and everybody whose buy-in is needed is represented, you may not have a need to add a letter of support or reference to your application. If, on the other hand, you have a community stakeholder whose perspective and input is valuable to your project, but who isn't an official member of your team, that's where you might capture their perspective, is through a letter of support or reference. There are 2 ways to attach that letter of support to your application, and you can use whichever works best for you. The first option is an upload field in the application itself. So if you've gone ahead and gotten your letters of reference lined up from your folks outside of your team, you can just upload them as attachments to your application. Or if you're still kind of rounding up those people and working on that process, you're able to submit your application in full, and then afterwards send email invitations through the platform to those outside folks requesting a letter of support. So we've provided both of those options. And one last thing that I want to point out is that the full application is available on our website. So if you want to see what kind of questions we're asking for and what the application entails before you jump in and create a profile, you're able to review it in its entirety on the website. That is also under the Apply tab. Now we're going to show you what it looks like to actually work on your application. As you can see, I'm on the Apply page of our website. This is the page where you can view all the questions on the application before you get started. So everything that you'll have to fill out on the application form is listed here. You can also print this page, and we encourage you to review it before you get started. There are a few links up top that you can click on to get started on the application as well, but I'm going to scroll to the button at the bottom of this page. Now we're on the actual application screen. You'll see the same instructional text at the top of this page, encouraging you to check out guidelines and the rubric, explaining that you own all the data that you submit as part of your proposal, reminding you of the deadline, all that good information. If you're interested in applying in Spanish, click here, and a Spanish translation of the application will open in a new tab. For our purposes today, though, let's proceed in English. If you've already created a profile and started your application, this is where you'll sign in to continue working on it. But if you haven't started yet, you'll need to create an account. So I'm going to click sign up, and I'm going to enter my email. And create a password. It let me know that my passwords match, and I'll click sign up. On this page, it will prompt you to start a profile, which is the first piece of your application. So let's click create a profile to get started. And the first thing you'll be prompted to do is answer 3 questions about eligibility before you can move forward. So I'll click yes, yes, yes. And then I can start my application. All right, before I move forward, I just want to point out some of these questions are marked with a red asterisk and other are not. The ones with the asterisk are required, the others are optional. If you don't have a social media handle, you can leave this box blank. I'll continue to fill out my profile. And autofill is helping me out here. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're able to add co-applicants to your application. If there are members of your team that you would like to help you fill out this form, we want to allow you to do that. So here, I'm going to click yes, add a team member. Now, you might just want to tell us who else is on your team, or you may want to give them access to your application. If you want to give them access to your application, you'll click yes here. If you don't, you just want us to know that they're on your team, click no. I want this particular person to help me, so I'm going to click yes. I'll enter their name. Email. And phone number. Now, if you've checked this box that you'd like them to collaborate, this platform will automatically send an email to the one that you've provided, letting the person know that you've added them to the application and that you can start working on it and they can start working on it with you. You can continue here and add as many team members as you like, selecting whether or not you allow them to collaborate on the application with you. For the sake of time, I'm just going to add one, and I'm going to say no one else is represented. You have the option to add up to 3 co-applicants. If you use up all those fields and still have other team members that you want us to know about, you can select 1, 2, or 3 from this dropdown, and it'll pop up more fields for you to fill out about that team member or partner organization. But let's return it to 0. I will select what kind of people are represented on my team. If I didn't select other, I'll write NA. And then there are a few questions about your team. I'm just going to quickly enter some text to move on here. You do not have to finalize your profile your first pass through. You're allowed to save it as a draft. But so we can move on to the application, I'm going to create my profile. It shows me my profile is complete, and I can now click here to get started on the application. When you get to this screen, you'll see 2 things. As I mentioned earlier, we have 2 options for you to submit your letters of recommendation. One of them is here, but I'll get into that a little bit later. If your application is not completed, if all the fields aren't filled out, it will say here when you log back in, action required. Let's click open. And here you can see the application in its entirety and start filling out questions. Again, questions marked with a red asterisk are required. So I'm going to scroll through this. As I mentioned earlier, we do require that video presentation, and here's where you can find some of those guidelines and tips for filming, but please remember this does not need to be a professional production, and we'll accept YouTube or Vimeo links. As you can see, these are all just text box responses. They have a word count limit, and you will see help text below explaining what we want to see in each answer. One of the only upload fields on this application is the budget. We ask you to provide your budget as either an Excel file or a PDF. And there's also a narrative component to this piece. Now we're at letters of support. This is one of the 2 ways that you can have your references captured. So if you've already gone ahead and gotten your letters from your supporters or your references, you can upload those files here. When your proposal is finished, you can click Ready to Submit, and that'll allow you to move forward. But let's save it as a draft. And we'll hit Close. Now, this is the other place where you can request a letter of recommendation. If you'd prefer that this platform send your reference an email to submit their recommendation, you can do that here. You'll click New Request. You'll add their name, their email, and write them a note, and then you can click Send. I'm not trying to add a recommender right now, so I'm going to delete this. Close this screen and return to our dashboard where we've got all of our options. Here you'll see the Submit button. It won't let me click on it because I haven't completed the application. Once you've finished this piece and it no longer says action required, you'll be allowed to submit. It's important to note that only the primary applicant can hit Submit. Those co-applicants that you may have added can work on every other part of your application, but they can't click that final button. So we think this platform is pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are ready to take some questions. All right. Benita, do you want to tee up questions or do you want me to start going through the list?
I'm not seeing any questions here.
Okay. So our first question is from Steve. Is there a form or a format to be followed for a proposal? I think we've answered that by showing the application platform and showing you what you need to submit as part of that. Everything that is required of the application is contained within that form. There's nothing else for this phase that we will request of you. Next question is from Kat. With the applicant, co-applicant, is that 4 people total or 3? So we limit it at 4, which is the primary applicant plus 3 co-applicants. But again, if you don't have to max out at 4, if it makes sense for your team for just one person to submit the application and not add any co-applicants, that's just fine. If you want to add 1 or 2 or 3, that's entirely up to you. We've got a question from Linda. Does the primary applicant have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, or can a city be the lead applicant and fiscal agent? So for university purposes, we have to remit funds to a nonprofit entity. In Canada and Mexico, 501c3 is not a legal designation, so we would work with you in that capacity. We do allow for fiscal agents, but when it comes to city offices, municipalities, you could be the lead applicant, but the money has to go to a team member who is a nonprofit. And I will pause in case you want to add anything there, Beth or Benita.
Go ahead, Benita. Did you want to say something? Okay. I think it was designed really for not-for-profit organizations to be the lead rather than local governments. And so we would encourage local governments to partner with community groups and others to submit.
Yeah. The next question, Aaron asks, what does BF stand for? I think what you actually might have heard was VF. VF Corporation is the parent company of a number of outdoor brands like Smartwool and the North Face. They relocated their headquarters to Denver relatively recently. And we have received the majority of our funding for this challenge from VF. So I hope that answers your question, Aaron.
Just to clarify, it's the VF Foundation, and they're online if you want to learn more about them. They do a lot of great work related to the challenge.
Our next question from Dominique. If awarded, is there a deadline by when funds need to be spent? And are there restrictions on what types of expenses are eligible?
We have typically said 2 years for funds to be expended. And what was the second half?
Are there any restrictions on what types of expenses are eligible?
That's a good question. I think generally, as long as they are accounted for in the proposal, in your budget, that, we'll make sure, and that they are fairly consistent with that would be fine. And we would let you know in advance then if there were issues with it.
I think the one thing that would probably fall under the category of ineligible is we cannot provide funding for political lobbying or advocacy.
Right. Also, most of these projects won't lend themselves to capital expenditures. It's worth noting it was designed more for capacity building, scaling, replicating, trying new coalitions, community building, et cetera. And we are also hopeful that you'll be able to leverage the funds into additional support as needed. It's not a requirement, but it's just a overall goal.
Yep. Next question, is there a PDF or Word version of the applications so we can work on it offline with our team? The answer is yes. I pointed that out on the website. Again, that's under the Apply tab in the main menu, and that is the application in its entirety. Dominique, I can follow up with you, and if you need a Word or a PDF version, I can easily provide that. All right. I think this next question comes from Elsie. Looks like you are having maybe an issue creating a profile. I don't know if kind of Britt and I stumbling through it gave you any insight, but I am happy to circle back with you offline after we wrap up today, just to make sure that you're able to get in there. The next question is from Carrie. Can a single organization be a partner on more than one team? How do I, if they're not the lead applicant?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
Elsie also asked about a Word document with the questions. I will follow up with you. Gotten that question a few times. Is there, Jason asks, is there a match required?
Why don't you say what the question is, just so everybody has the benefit of it.
Asking for a PDF or a Word document of the application. So there have been a few people who have asked for that. That is something we can definitely provide after we wrap up today. Jason's question, is there a match required for this grant? If so, how much? No, we do not require a match. As Beth mentioned, we encourage you to leverage funding. If you have funding already committed to your project, we provide space in the application for you to tell us about that. And on the flip side, if you're able to use this funding opportunity as a way to leverage support from other funders, we'd love to see that as well, but there is no match required. Laura asks, can you go over the narrative questions and what you expect to see in those answers? For each question, there's help text within the application itself, giving you examples of how you might fill in each of those fields. But Beth and Benita, if you want to say a little bit more about what we might expect to see in those narrative answers, I will pause.
Benita, go ahead if you're.
I would just say, from thinking about it from your side, we want to make this as simple and as straightforward as possible. And we do have, I think, a word count limit on most of those answers, and I think it's 250 words.
It ranges, but yeah, there's a limit noted on each question.
Yeah, but again, it's meant to be user-friendly in the process, and we want to really get to the essence of your ideas and thoughts and problem-solving thinking about some of these issues. So I think that's really where we want to see you shine and bring forward that kind of communication.
And Lara, if there are specific questions that you'd like to talk through a little bit more, please feel free to shoot us an email and we can talk more with you. Yanni asks, what types of projects were considered last year? Beth, do you want to take that?
Sure, there are a couple of things. Last year, the challenge was called the Connectivity Challenge, and it really focused on landscape scale conservation throughout North America. And so it was a different type of challenge. You can go to connectivitychallenge.org to see more about that and to download the booklet. That's actually a great example of the way that we share information about the proposals to build broader interest, to build connections, and to let funders know about what's out there. In a couple of cases this year, projects we didn't fund were funded by other folks because they found them through the website. So that's not your question, but the types of projects that became finalists, interestingly, even though it was not an urban prize per se, one of our top candidates was from Detroit Audubon or Great Lakes Audubon through a program in Detroit that focused on birds and in the Great Lakes and migration patterns. So another was looking at a group of Native nations in the southwestern United States and California that were looking at climate resilience through a landscape lens. A third was a data project from the Pacific Northwest seeking to identify gaps in connectivity. Another was in West Virginia, looking at reconnecting corridors that had been disrupted through mountaintop mining. What am I forgetting? There's one more.
Borderlands.
Oh, the one that won. Yeah, sorry. The Borderlands Restoration Network proposed a project that combined the local mezcal producers with the protection of agave and the bats that fertilize the agaves. So it was to work with the producers to create a certification for their bacanora, which is what the local mezcal is called, that would protect the agave populations and the bat populations. So all just to say that those were meeting the criteria for last year's challenge. This year's challenge is distinct. I do want to just encourage folks and repeat that because our goal is really to create a community of interest and to connect people to each other and share ideas where people desire to share them, we encourage folks to apply. If you don't make it to the second round, you will get feedback from the evaluators who are drawn from professional communities from across the continent. If you do advance, you'll receive a capacity building grant to develop your final application. And then regardless, we'll share the information about all the projects submitted, again, not in a proprietary way, but in a general information way with a broader set of folks and make it available to download so that our goal of connecting projects and helping share good ideas and showing what's going on can be shared as broadly as possible. Benita, do you want to add anything?
Okay. The next question comes from Kimberly. For the video submittal, do you have to use YouTube or can you use Vimeo? I think Vimeo is perfectly acceptable. I'm happy to make that language update to the application so that people know that that's an option. I think that's a great suggestion, so thank you, Kimberly. The next question comes from Kelly. What are the time requirements over the summer if you are accepted to the finalist cohort, and what is the potential seed funding?
So the potential seed funding is $10,000 per finalist organization. The timing to learn whether you're a finalist is probably early June is what we're looking at. And then the timing for the discussions and workshopping and whatever capacity building programs we hear from finalists that they're interested in will be over between June and the Pitch Fest in September. The final timing on that will be determined in the next few months and posted on the website or shared when we're a little clearer about it. We didn't want to presume what type of capacity folks needed or what types of things might help them build their applications. So we're waiting in part to see what comes in with the proposals and, you know, which projects become finalists. Again, if we can, we continue to fundraise, we will build the pool of finalists to up to 20 finalists. But at this point, we're looking at funding for 5. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Benita, anything you want to add before I move on to the next one? Okay. Tori asks, can a draft of the application be printed? You can definitely print from the page on our website that just has the application in full. Britt, I'll direct this one to you, but I assume if someone's, you know, filling out those fields on WiseHive, they're able to print it as they're working on it.
That's correct. You'll be able to print it out. The one caveat to that is you have to save it as a draft first. So if you start working on it and you don't save that first time, it won't allow you to print as a PDF. Next to your name in the profile or in the application, there's going to be a little caret. So it'll be the name on the left-hand side. You'll just drop down that caret option and you'll have your ability to print.
Great, thanks, Britt. Janine asks, are you looking to create a cohort that has a related project that can be mutually beneficial? Excuse me.
I don't think we know yet. Yeah, the general idea would be to build the cohort. It really refers to the group of finalists because we don't know what those projects will be yet. We don't know how mutually beneficial they are, but we're hoping to build a sense of collegiality and a sense of workshopping and working together on best ideas. Benita, you want to add to that?
I just want to just reinforce, you know, just our understanding of the environment that we're in, right? And the uncertainty and what we've all lived through in this past year. And so I think the openness of this process is a good thing. You know, I mean, I think it will lead to some synergy that we haven't imagined before. And it can make some folks a little uncomfortable, but I think that's, you know, we've been living in an uncomfortable environment. And I just think that there's the great hope that, you know, Beth talks about in connection and in problem solving and just in knowing, right? Knowing a little more about what's going on in some cities, communities, villages, territories, and some of the creative thinking that that we can surface here.
I would just add one thing, which is these ideas, the idea of natural solutions for climate resilience and what does it have to do with racial equity, these are really emerging areas of learning. And so while there has been some great work done and even research to document that work, we just want to acknowledge that it's an emerging field. We do not have any proprietary interest in this material, but are more hoping to expand the field and make it stronger by sharing ideas and inviting people to be part of that conversation in whatever way, you know, makes the most sense.
Great, thanks, Beth. The next question comes from Jane. Do you prefer that a lead applicant is a nonprofit? I think we covered this a little bit already. The lead applicant doesn't have to be that nonprofit entity, but we need to be able to remit the funds should your team win to a nonprofit member of your team or their fiscal agent. In terms of preference, I don't know, Beth or Benita, if you wanted to speak to that.
I would just
ahead,
emphasize the equity issues here, and we don't want to lose that and lose the focus on building that capacity. in BIPOC communities and making sure that that leadership is engaged.
Thank you. That is a very significant part of this, of equal interest and importance to the natural solutions to climate resilience. So I would just reinforce that. That's right.
All right, Kelsey asks, will this challenge be offered annually?
Probably not annually. If we are lucky and continue to be able to raise funds for it, it will be biannual in some form. But part of what we hope through the community of interest that we're trying to create, what we'll learn is, you know, how useful was this exercise for the folks who participated in it, and can they help us continue to think about what next challenges might look like, what would be most meaningful as the world evolves, as understanding evolves, as you know, we get through this process. We hope to continue to engage the folks who are interested in that conversation. So there may be an urban resilience, sorry, just building on that, maybe an urban resilience component every year, but the Thriving Cities Challenge or its equivalent that focuses on related issues in metropolitan areas at this point is conceived of as being offered every other year.
Great. JR asks, will you have a tutorial or video on the application procedure? I hope, despite our minor technical difficulties, that what we did about 20 minutes ago will suffice in that realm. We will share a recording of today's webinar with everybody who signed up either today or tomorrow, so you'll be able to re-watch that content. Britt, I don't know if there are any other resources you think we should direct people on your website, or if there's a video we can share, but
Can I add one idea, which is that since we're doing this twice, that maybe by next time we'll have that down a little more smoothly, and that would be the video to focus on, in addition to today's, but just given the, you know, blips, it might help.
Great. Aaliyah asks, does the primary applicant need to be the entity with the BIPOC representation?
I don't think it has to be, but it's important that it doesn't end up being kind of a tokenism gesture to include a BIPOC organization. We really see it as being central to the project. Do you want to add, Benita?
Okay. Catherine asks, can you clarify the prize amount? It is a range of 50 to 100,000. Beth, I'll let you speak a little bit more about that.
Right. When we realized the importance of building the capacity building piece into the proposal process, we allocated $50,000 for those 5 finalists each for the, you know, phase before the final prize. Because of that, right now we have a $50,000 pool for the prize. We are actively fundraising and hope we can increase that, but it is at this point a $50,000 prize. We will announce it on the website and in social media if we succeed at that.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question. And just so everybody knows, all the questions that we did not get to today, we will still answer them. We will compile those questions and answers and share them as part of the follow-up materials that we'll send to you after today's webinar. And again, if questions come up after we've wrapped up today, please don't hesitate to reach out. So the last question that we can squeeze in here is from Maria. Can a faculty apply with the individual name, or do we have to apply as part of the university that we are in? Beth, do you want to take that one?
I'm not sure we've anticipated that one. It might require a little more research, but I would assume that in order for a faculty to receive funding, it would have to go through the university. And so we might need it to be related to the university.
Right. I would say if there are other team members who have that nonprofit status, that might be who we remit the funds to. But if you as a team member are, interested in this project, but you're not necessarily representing your university, you're representing yourself or perhaps one of your extracurricular activities, as it were, I think that would be fine. I will say from last year's application, we did have a few team members who were, coming from academic background, but they weren't necessarily representing their university or their institution in an official capacity. But I think if you wanted the funds to go to the university, it couldn't just be the individual.
Yeah, and we can't give money to an individual absent a nonprofit status. So that's important as well.
Yeah. So, all right. With that, thank you everybody for your time today. We have come up on the 1 hour mark. Again, we will follow up with the recording of today's session as well as answers to all the questions that we got to and did not have time to address. And if you have any questions for us, please feel free to shoot us an email.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.